Hi everybody. Waiting for people to join to start live. Waiting to connect with Janet. Hey
Hi,
girl, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing okay. Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday.
Ah,
I'm drinking my tea during our live because I want to keep my body healthy and warm.
awesome. Self-care, very important.
Yes.
Modeling it for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So hi everybody. My name is Alyssa and I run the Social Twerkers page.
And I'm Janet Bayramian. You can find me on Instagram at Therapy with Janet B. I'm an LCSW licensed in California and Florida.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. I'm an LCSW. I'm licensed in California, and I work at OOTify. I'm the director of client services. And so today we wanted to address the coronavirus, social distancing, how that affects our mental health as well, and obviously affects our physical health, but we're not experts on that part, and how it affects our profession and teletherapy, all of those things. So I'll briefly go over what the CDC suggests for how to manage dealing with the virus, trying to avoid getting it, keeping yourself as safe as possible. We know some people are able to stay home, and that's awesome so that you can stay away from people and prevent the spread. Some people still are required to go into work. You guys are all stars. But here are some things that you can do to help with that. So washing your hands, making sure not to touch your face, avoid close contact with other people. They're recommending at least 6 feet. Stay home if you're sick, and if you can try and reschedule or do a phone session if a client is sick. Make sure to cover your coughs and sneezes. Wear a mask if you're sick. They're saying that if you're not sick, that wearing a mask isn't necessary. Clean and disinfect all frequently touched areas, whether it's your phone, car keys, even your car, your steering wheel, things like that. Even just working with kids, I always would have hand sanitizer in my car to use at all times. So trying to just stay, as clean as possible.
Yes, and from like the private practice world, if there are therapists that are currently in private practice, there's been this whole movement to stop in-person face-to-face sessions and move forward with telehealth, teletherapy, so doing the online virtual therapy. And it's been amazing. I'm part of that movement. Alyssa's part of that movement. All of us are doing it, so I think it's wonderful. A couple of just board updates and federal mandates about that. So previously the requirement was that all of us therapists had to use HIPAA compliant software. So it had to be private and confidential, but there's a new mandate and bill that just passed that said to make our jobs a little bit easier and to make therapy more accessible, that we don't necessarily have to have a HIPAA compliant software. So previously, something like Skype or FaceTime was not allowable, but currently it is. So I would just say check with your boards, just to check to see, what their board of like social work or mental health programs are requiring, just so that you're up to date with everything. Currently, I'm using HIPAA compliant software, and that's just because that's been my practice for a long time. I know OOTify is a HIPAA compliant software. So again, we want to just follow the regulations that our boards are requiring. So I know it can be a little bit confusing, but we want to make sure that everybody stays up to date.
Very good point. Yeah, always checking in with, like you're saying, checking what the board says for each state. And then also checking in with if you work at an agency or a private practice, checking in with your supervisor, make sure you're following their policies. You don't want anything to put your job at risk or anything like that, put your clients at risk. So always following up with that. But yeah, we're in a new situation. Nothing like this has ever happened in my lifetime or that I've heard of. So they're kind of figuring things out as we go, which we're going to figure out that some things aren't going to go so well. We've seen already some of that. So like Janet said, just focus on best practice. If you can do HIPAA compliant, that's obviously better for clients. And like she said, also, OOTify is a HIPAA compliant platform, and you're able to hold sessions via chat, audio, or video. And it's all unlimited, so you're not having to only stick to one form of communication. Even within one session, you could switch through with all three if needed. And we're providing a free trial so that you can try out the app and support your clients while social distancing or trying to make sure everyone's staying safe. So if you're interested or want more information, no strings attached, feel free to DM us, either social workers on OOTify, or you can also email us at iris@ootify.com. That's IRIS@ootify.com.
Awesome.
Why don't we jump into some of these questions? How's that sound?
Perfect.
All right. And again, we'll be giving our suggestions and what we've done in similar situations or what we are doing currently, but always check in with your supervisors, or if you work at an agency or private practice or group practice, just checking in and make sure you're following all those policies. So one of the first things that someone suggested or asked for some advice for was how to manage anxiety. Very common response to this situation.
Yes. Okay. So, big point to indicate here is that, first of all, I want to validate if you're feeling anxious, because it's a very anxious time, unfortunately, with a lot of unknowns and a lot of just very rapid changes happening in our own personal lives, in our professional lives, and globally, and in our communities. So I just want to validate that if you're feeling anxious, the anxiety is very, very normal. And that you're not, your mind is not making it up. It's actually, in my humble opinion, healthy anxiety to have right now, as long as it's not impacting, your day-to-day and getting in the way of your life. If it is getting in the way of your life, then we have to figure out ways to manage that. So I can just say what I'm personally doing to manage anxiety is I am limiting social media and news intake for the time being. I limit myself to one federal news story and one local news story to my community in the morning, and then limit my social media around the coronavirus as best as I possibly can for a certain time frame. And then that's it, because if I'm constantly bombarded with that information, it feels like a lot and it's so overwhelming. And all of our sessions basically are about this virus and how our lives have changed. So it's literally feeling like 24/7. So if you can, as best as possible, yes, stay informed, keep in contact with family and coworkers, but at the same time, limit what you can so you can just give your brain and body a break.
That's a really good point. And also helping clients to learn these kinds of boundaries to set with themselves and with others. Obviously the physical boundaries, but like you're saying, with all the news and all of that, just making sure you're not overwhelmed and overstimulated. And especially if you're dealing with it in all of your sessions, making sure you have time to check in. If someone's having a little bit more stronger reactions, you can practice grounding and teaching them how to do that and how to know when to do that. So for example, focusing on 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can touch, and 1 thing you can taste. It helps to distract from that immediate anxiety and help you be able to get control of your mind and your body, so you're not in that fight or flight mode, or at least calm it down a little bit. And then you're able to practice taking deep breaths. Other things that can help are making a schedule and a routine for yourself, especially if you're at home all day now, where we're not getting a change of scenery. It can be frustrating, overwhelming, any feelings really, boring, annoying. So giving yourself a schedule to follow can help you to feel productive and still move through your daily routine and things like that. Another thing can be trying to figure out what specifically is causing the anxiety. Obviously, for a lot of us, the coronavirus is changing our environment where we're stuck, or it can feel like we're stuck. So that can cause anxiety. Or if it's worrying about having enough supplies, or worrying about your family on top of your caseload, things like that, identifying it can help to kind of validate it, as well as just help you realize it, and then you can see what's in your control and what's out of your control, and do your best to use coping skills for what's in your control.
I love that. And like you said, you know, having that structure at home, what's really important if you're, aside from just the anxiety, if you're struggling with depression or prone to depression, you'll want to not stay in your pajamas all day. It might be tempting since, you know, if you're someone that had to go to an office to like be able to do your work in your pajamas sounds super cool. But you'll want to actually not do that because, you know, research will show that like when we get up, we get dressed, we're changed. If you want to wear makeup, if that feels good for you, it'll be really important so that you're not feeling like sluggish and dragging throughout the day. So I would definitely recommend doing that too as part of just like the day-to-day routine.
That's a really good point. Being aware of what your baseline is, if you're usually anxious, which is me, adding on more anxiety and understanding where those anxieties are coming from. If you have depression or other diagnoses, being aware of that and seeing how this affects that. That's a really good point, Janet.
Yeah, in terms of other things to do, I mean, everybody is recommending as best as possible movement. You don't need to have a Peloton at home. You can if you want to, but I've heard actually that they're halting orders of Peloton because they want to make sure that everybody is safe. So that's interesting to me. But otherwise, you can find so many different like free workouts on YouTube, free yoga flows on YouTube. There's many different free apps that you can find that offer like cardio or interval training. Even if it's like just doing something in your living room, or if you have like a spacious garage perhaps to do that. We need to keep our bodies moving. We can't just like stay at home and like sit because that again can impact and not improve our depression or anxiety. We need to have movement. And I like the one suggestion the individual wrote, FaceTiming a friend to work out. I've actually thought about this. I thought about scheduling a Zoom and to work out, and whoever wants to join me can work out. So I might do that at some point.
Yes, using technology to our advantage so we can still be distant but stay connected.
Yeah.
Another thing for parents, or if you have kids in your care, there's a lot of resources for teachers that are posting like free lessons or free classes for kiddos, and a lot of things that they can follow along online so that you can either get some alone time or get some quiet time, things like that, that we're not used to being around our family 24/7 this much necessarily. And yeah, just helping them to stay stimulated in a positive way, helping them to learn while being safe at home.
Yeah, and let's not forget some of our basic tools that we already know: meditation, mindfulness, grounding, doing that as well, so that again we can focus on some of the thoughts that are coming up and work on trying to either accept them or clear them as best as possible. So we want to make sure that we're still using some of our basic tools that we encourage our clients to do as well.
Yeah, very good point. All of these things are things we can model and practice with clients to help them as well. All right. Our next question is how to stay safe when you're still expected to see clients in the field. A lot of the things that I mentioned before, like that the CDC was talking about, are helpful for the physical health aspects. If you feel unsafe, and like if a lot of clients are sick, or there's just certain conditions that you don't feel safe, you can advocate for yourself. Talk to your agency, talk to your supervisor, management, and see what the options are. It is hard, and our jobs are to help people, especially in times of crisis, and this is one of them. But we aren't able to do our jobs if we're not healthy ourselves. So if you can switch to phone sessions with at least some clients, kids can be a little challenging over the phone, obviously. If you can do video sessions, that would be great to decrease contact. Even if it's just some of your clients, not all of them, that's decreasing contact with people. And then also checking in with them before you go to see how they're feeling and how you're feeling. If either of you are sick, then staying home is better, and you not going to that session if you can reschedule, or again, phone session, but see what your agency or your practice does, if they have any policies in place, if they're creating any policies for this situation. I've heard of some agencies that are coming up with like remote policies, working remote. And like you said, some places are looking into like allowing more teletherapy, which we weren't previously allowed to do. I worked in like DMH contracted agencies, so we weren't allowed to use video, or we could use phone and then texting through an encrypted work phone. So see what they're doing to adapt for those situations of keeping yourself safe. And then if you are going to the house, doing your best to stay a little bit farther away from them, calling them before, calling, if it's a kid, calling the parent to make a plan of what the session's going to look like and what they feel comfortable with, what you feel comfortable with. If you have hand sanitizer, bringing wipes, doing your best not to touch other things. Have a bag that's specifically for work and leave it in your car. If you can leave it in your trunk, that would be great. That way you're not bringing it into your home. And then when you do get home, taking a shower right away and putting those clothes in like a dirty hamper, just so you can get all of those, if there are germs or if there is anything on you, you can put it all in one spot to not spread it around your home.
Yeah, all really great ideas to implement. I would say the worst case scenario, if you don't have a manager or supervisor that is supportive of what's going on, or human resources has not changed their policies in any way, and you don't want to see clients, you're older, maybe you have a lower immune system that the CDC is recommending to stay home, then, I've actually advised people to contact their HR and discuss a possible like leave of absence, paid leave of absence if possible. And worst case scenario too, if needed, maybe you can go and get like a doctor's note indicating that your doctor recommends that you work from home, and then have that for HR that's showing proof like, hey, this is something my doctor recommends. Again, I know that might take a little while and that's a process, but it's worth it for your health. And if you are at a place where they're just not compliant with your requests, then I would say look into that if possible.
Very good point. Yeah, we have a right to advocate for ourselves. We don't always know what the answer will be or what response we'll get, but it's important to do that to make sure, we're staying as safe as possible in this situation. And again, it's new, so a lot of agencies might not have a policy exactly for this situation. I don't think I know of any that did have one for this exact situation. So seeing what you can do to work on together.
Yeah.
All right. And then the next question we have is, how do you use telehealth with children, generally under 10? And it's interesting. It can be challenging. You'll have some mature clients that you're able to have conversations with them, things like that. For the younger ones, which is generally the case anyways, you'll need parent involvement or guardian involvement to help them and help kind of moderate the session. Since you're not there in person, it's harder to implement like setting limits and things like that. Your sessions are going to look different. They're not going to necessarily be as much processing, things like that, especially needing to be aware of who they're around and who, like, talking about certain content in front of certain people. If their parents are there and you're not able to talk about certain things, figuring out ways to check in with them if possible, and if not, just doing the best that you can, helping with a lot of modeling and like play therapy. So that if you can have them, if they have any board games, if they have any art or crafts that they can do at home, if there's like fun things that they can do, like using old crayons and melting them into new crayons. If a family doesn't have access to like an oven or something like that, maybe like making bubbles out of soap, but also being aware that that is something that we need and we are in quarantine. So just being aware of their situation. If you've been to the home before, just think back of what they have available. If anything, pen and paper. You can play tic-tac-toe, you can play hangman, you can play that dot game where you draw a bunch of dots and then make squares. And I've done that with all clients, and you will be surprised at how awesome they think that is. Because I would think that they would find that boring, but sometimes they find that fun. And even if it's like a board game, having you be a player, but they have to move your player for you, remembering your turn, things like that, seeing how they communicate, working on all of those skills. And yeah, just providing feedback, helping with modeling, coaching them through using like positive communication skills, how to praise, all of those tasks. So it might be a little bit simplified compared to other sessions that you have, and they're probably going to feel awkward at first too, and some of them might feel like quote unquote, sorry about that, but yeah, just doing your best to be consistent and continuing to provide that care. Yeah.
There's also, I believe you can find like a virtual Uno game. I don't know if there's a cost to it or not. But if y'all are on Facebook, there's a new Facebook group that was developed for child and play therapists that need to figure out how to do this virtually. It's called, I don't know the full name, but I know it starts with teleplay. I would say search for it on Facebook, start with the word teleplay, and Alyssa, if I find it, I might actually just share it with you, and then if you want to share it on the stories, that would be great.
Yeah,
but there's a lot of therapists on that group that's giving really great suggestions on ways kind of to navigate this if you do see children and still, you know, want to support your clients.
Yeah, very good point. Some other ideas too are if you can send them worksheets, if you have like encrypted email or whatever your policy is for where you work, if you can snail mail them the worksheets, that would be awesome. I don't know how realistic that is, but if it is, do it. That's one way. Or also just like creating your own. Again, if they just have a pen and paper, you can have mood charts, you can have thermometers. This might actually be an interesting way to get more accurate mood tracking and behavior tracking from parents because they're around the kiddos more and more consistently every day, not like just on the weekend or in the afternoons, things of that sort. So again, for that, just helping them to have some positive experiences and practicing some coping skills, figure out ways to keep them engaged and get the buy-in from the kiddos. So even playing like Simon Says or I Spy, it might seem like a little bit silly or it feels really like it's just a game, but you're practicing a whole bunch of things and problem solving skills, things like that. I might do another live this weekend talking about how to document all of these things. So I'll put a poll for that and see what you all think of just like how to write these up, if that would be helpful.
Awesome.
Another helpful app, it's called Breathe by Sesame Street. It's something, I don't know how realistic it would be to do it during session, but parents can use it with kiddos to help them practice problem solving skills. It teaches like taking deep breaths to calm down. There's a screen where like a bunch of bubbles pop up and you have to pop them, and kids love that. So just some ideas like that. All right. And then the next one, we kind of covered this. It says, how are other agencies and schools handling seeing clients? And it's a mixed response. Have you heard anything on out in Florida?
So in Florida, a lot of our schools have closed too. I live in Port St. Lucie, so I'm about an hour north of Palm Beach. And basically, yeah, all the kiddos are home. So my understanding is everyone's doing like the online classes and virtual classes as you sort of navigate what's going on. That's been my understanding.
Yeah, I've heard in LA, the schools are closed, and then so school counselors, some of them are doing telehealth, some of them are still trying to figure things out. And then agencies, it's mixed. Some agencies have people staying home and doing telehealth support or phone check-ins. Some of them are still having their providers see clients, having the clinicians see clients. I know in like medical social work settings and hospitals, they're still required to go in. So it's a mix. Like I said, it's new for majority of the country, the world. So they're figuring things out as they go. So just doing your best to advocate for yourselves. If like you're around sick people, if they can wear, have them wear masks, or if you can get a mask. Again, they say if you're not having symptoms, you don't necessarily need a mask, but figuring out ways to keep yourself safe. All right. And then next one is how to manage having your own personal space at home and also how to manage family conflict.
That is a good question. And I have a lot of compassion for individuals who are in like studio apartments right now.
Definitely.
So I would say as best as possible, be creative and create space wherever you can that can be like your own like little office where, you know, you have your laptop, you have your phone, if you have, you know, notepad that you need and stuff like that, whatever your job requires, create that for yourself. I mean, if you don't have like an extra bedroom, you don't necessarily need that, but perhaps, you know, like kind of having like one little corner to yourself that's sort of your workstation, so that once work is done, you can kind of close the laptop, turn off the phone, and then leave that space behind and then go into your regular life, or as regular as it can be right now. And if you are in a like space that you're sharing, like let's say you're in a relationship or you live with multiple family members and you guys have to maybe share space. I've talked with this about some of my clients. Maybe if you can have like earbuds or headphones of some sort to kind of separate yourself from that person. I have another client that they share the workspace, but like their backs are to each other, so they don't really see each other, like their workstations are facing different direction. So that's another possibility. So I would say like now's the time to really get creative. I don't know if everyone wants to like invest in this right now, but on Amazon you can find like different room dividers. So if that's something that you'd want to invest in, like you can, and then put it in front of your little workspace so that you can have like that privacy.
Very good point. Yeah, and then if you have kids at home or working with clients, helping clients and families to figure out a plan, there's different ways of handling that, making sure that people know that there's different space for each person. Usually like in a house like or in an apartment, we have our spot that we go to in a family, so kind of reserving that for people, or even doing not musical chairs, but like rotating so people can like move throughout the day to each spot. So just helping people to be able to have that as much alone time as possible. I know sometimes families can be in a 1-bedroom apartment, so that can be challenging. So like Janet's saying, figuring out how to divide up the room. If it's possible to get those dividers, that'd be cool. If not, even be creative. You can use a sheet if it's really necessary to have a physical boundary. Sounds kind of silly, but it's when we're spending this much time at home, it might be necessary, and that's okay. But yeah, just figuring out a plan and having set like alone time and having set like family time or time with your partner or whoever you live with, if you're roommates. So if you want to have like, oh, we'll have movie nights on Monday nights and watch a TV show on this night and have reading time at this time. So it can kind of give people something to look forward to help manage conflict, and then also giving people that time away from each other to again manage conflict. But yeah, those are some ideas.
I saw a really funny meme the other day. You might have posted it actually, where it says if you're working at home and like you're in a relationship with your partner, it said something like create like a fake person so that any problems that you're having at home, you can just blame it on that fake coworker or something.
Yeah, I thought
that was genius. So there's that. And yeah, I like the idea of just having like individual space. Even if it means like for those like 30 minutes or hour, you just don't talk, do that. And communicate that to your partner. And I see some comments about like going outside for breaks. So from our knowledge, like we're still allowed to go outside as long as we maintain the physical distance. So if your job does permit, like go out for a walk, take a break if you need, and do some of that self-care throughout the day so that, you know, if once you're starting to feel a little stir crazy at home, like you can take that little time to yourself.
Very good point. Yeah, change the scenery, help to switch things up so you don't feel like you're going a bit stir crazy or anything like that. All right. Our next question is how to support a friend who is feeling alone but you can't hang out with them.
Virtual hangouts. That is like the new thing at this point. I've seen Zoom watch parties happening where everyone's like watching the same movie together at the same time. I've seen Zoom hangouts. I'm actually hosting one on Saturday, if anyone's interested, where we're just gonna like eat, chat, whatever, on Saturday, 12 p.m. Pacific. So virtual hangouts are like the new thing at this point. You can always, like I said, FaceTime, Skype with people. It seems like now's the time to really do that so that, like, I know the term is social distance, but you know what we still want is social connection during this time. So really, really important for us to use technology to our advantage as best as possible.
Yeah, those are really good ideas. I even heard of something, I didn't test it out, so I don't know if it was true, but Netflix is doing something where you can start a movie at the same time with friends.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's another idea of way of being connected while being separated. And if you have a friend that's maybe struggling or something like that, there's a lot of online resources, but I would ask them first, see what they need. If we start throwing like solutions at someone, it might be overwhelming and just frustrating because then they're not being heard. So maybe they just want to talk about, like we're saying, if we need a break from all of this news and stress, just talking about funny stuff, even talking about memes. You guys see me posting memes all the time. That's my coping skill. Whether they need someone to listen, even if it's like text or chatting through like DMing and Instagram, that might be enough for them for where they're at. Or if they need a phone call or FaceTime, yeah, just seeing what they need and asking how you can support them. It's always a good idea.
Absolutely, yes. And please reach out to your friends that you know are maybe struggling with depression, who are very anxious, who maybe have PTSD, or those that, you know, tend to isolate typically and are now we're sort of forced to do that in a way. Please reach out to your friends just to see, you know, how they're doing. But also reach out to your friends that you perceive as strong because, you know, not everyone has that strength all the time, you know. So it's important to just reach out, like you said, and just see how everyone's doing.
Very true. And yeah, like I said too, there are a lot of online resources. There's still all of the hotlines and things like that. I've seen some things going around that pointed out that didn't come to mind at first is, for example, like kids going home to abusive parents or abusive settings. So helping them find resources that they can use, or if someone's in like a domestic violence or IPV situation, helping them, linking them to services if possible. Again, being careful and not just throwing all of this at them, but just knowing that those are out there in case it comes up and it's something that would be beneficial.
Yes.
All right. The next question is it a red flag if my therapist is not offering clients discounted rates or video sessions right now?
That is a good question.
Yes.
So I would say, I think we both agree on this, not necessarily. Therapists each have their own set fees. They have set fees for face-to-face counseling, they have set fees for workshops, they have set fees for coaching, and you know, they're sharing basically the same information. They're sharing the same support. They're validating. They're giving you coping skills. That doesn't change whether you're meeting face-to-face or you're doing the teletherapy. So some therapists may not change their prices, and you know that's not something that you know we've been told that we have to do, or like our boards or federally we've been mandated to do that. However, it just depends on every therapist's or social worker's personal and business ethics. So if I would say, like, if you're needing some pro bono therapy or therapy at a reduced cost, have that conversation with your therapist. Let them know what's going on, you know, financially. All therapists, we want to talk about it with you. It can be a very uncomfortable conversation, and I'm not saying that it's easy. But at the same time, it's still important to be real about your situation. Many therapists offer sliding scale fees, and if they don't, they will likely refer you to someone that does. There are many of us out here, and it's all possible.
Yeah, it's definitely a good conversation to have. Even if they weren't offering like teletherapy options, just asking them and letting them know if you have like health concerns, things of that sort. And then, yeah, I feel like almost every single person is affected right now financially to some extent by the situation. So it can still feel uncomfortable, but just know that everyone should be able to understand, especially as a therapist. We need to be able to empathize. If they have like their set rates and fees that they're not able to change, like Janet said, you can always see if there's someone else that you can see and get a referral from them to make sure that you're able to continue this progress and this work, but it's not causing you additional stress financially.
And I understand that all the insurance companies right now, if you're getting your mental health therapy through insurance, they're working to get telehealth covered, whereas some previously didn't cover it. Of course, there's this extenuating circumstance. So more than likely, you can talk with your provider about it, or you can even call in the insurance yourself and ask, is teletherapy going to be covered, at least for the time being? That's going to be really important so that, we make sure that you can have that coverage and also that your therapist gets paid.
That's a really good point. All right. The next question we have are resources for low-income families, basic food, and toiletries. If you check my story, I've been posting a bunch of resources there, and I'm saving them in the resources highlights. A lot of them are for like California and LA area, because that's where I'm from, so that's where I know of most things, or I'm seeing most things. But if you guys see stuff for other things, feel free to send them to me and I can post them and share them. A lot of schools are offering, I know LAUSD public schools are offering food pickup for kids. A lot of grocery stores, for those that are able to afford groceries, are offering an earlier time for older adults to go in so that there's less people there and they're able to get their shopping done and hopefully help to protect their health. Someone had mentioned that a lot of food banks might be closed, but a lot of areas around here a lot of areas everywhere are working on collecting funds as well as supplies for families. So yeah, check out the resources in my tab. Again, all the online options as well. All right. Have you guys heard of anything else in Florida that's different?
Haven't seen anything different. It seems like California is doing a little bit more than Florida is, just because we shut down, seems like we shut down everything a couple days after California did. But if I learn of any resources for Florida, I will definitely keep everyone posted. I know that in Florida, for registered interns, if you're not licensed, they're working on getting the board to approve teletherapy for registered interns. For right now, it wasn't an option, but that's currently being processed at the moment. So if you're a registered intern in Florida, keep your eye out on what the Florida board is working on for that.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I've seen some like petitions going around too for students, like current students. I've seen it for MSW and psychology students. They're trying to figure out a way of how people can still get like their practicum hours. Some I've seen about getting them waived, just so people aren't put at an even bigger setback and they're still able to graduate and things like that. So I don't know too much about it. I've just seen a little bit about those, but just wanted to mention them. And then our last question is working in residential treatment and best practices to limit exposure for myself and clients. So we've touched on a lot of things that would apply to this. Again, advocating for yourself if it's a safety health issue, talking to management and things like that, and then trying to figure out what you can do, because we can't just leave a residential program by themselves and just hope it runs okay. But seeing if there's like other shifts that can be covered by certain people so it's less time exposed. If there are parts of the job that can be done remotely, seeing if that part can be done remote. Again, working on the hygiene stuff and the hygiene of all the clients, and then seeing if your agency company, whatever the setting is, if they can provide more like hand sanitizer, things to wipe down, like disinfectant things to help protect you guys, and then masks if necessary. Those are the things that I can think of.
Great idea. And of course, you know, between, let's say, talking or having your sessions with your clients, making sure you run to the bathroom and wash your hands for 20 seconds, like the CDC recommends. That would be my thought as well, just to, again, keep yourself and your body safe. And like we also talked about previously, trying to not touch your face.
Very good point. Those are all the questions that we got from people that submitted them. Thank you everyone for submitting them. Any other things that you wanted to touch on, Janet?
I wanted to touch on something a little bit unrelated. I mean, it's related to COVID-19, but it's more about kind of if we can possibly shift our perspective on it. So, of course, it's devastating. Of course, we're all impacted. There's been deaths, there's been health concerns, you know, people are closing down their businesses, people are losing money. It's devastating. It's really, really hard right now. But what I was listening to something this morning that actually really forced me to change my perspective just a little bit. It talked about how, you know, this might even be like a paradigm shift for all of us, because we are literally forced to be at home right now. We are forced to be with ourselves. We are forced to be with our own thoughts. We are forced to be with our own feelings. Yes, we have distractions. Yes, we have Netflix. Yes, we have those things. But how much of that can we really be doing at this point until we look at our own lives and our own selves? And I agree with that. I feel like it's kind of forcing us to really look at who we are, force us to look at what our lives are about, force us to really look at our values, force us to really look at our relationships. So that really touched me because I was thinking about it. I was like, yeah, like that's what we're kind of called to do. I mean, aside from just being safe and healthy, I think there's, you know, possibility of like a mental health shift at this point, because we're sort of forced to be with ourselves and look at ourselves, which I thought was very powerful and interesting.
That's a really good point. There's always like the positives that happen from negative situations. So seeing how people are coming together, how they're saying that a lot of teachers and therapists too, like you had to completely change how you run everything, going from in person to teachers creating lessons plans and doing it within days of changing everything that they do about their job, to make sure that kids are still learning, and for our profession, like still providing support how and when possible. So it's just been really cool to see that. Again, not ignoring all, like you're saying, there's a lot of negative that comes with it, and not ignoring that or minimizing that, but just to give credit where credit is due to all the amazing people that are stepping up and being awesome.
Yeah, I mean, and if you even like think about it too, like for me, it's made me also think about like just health in general, because, you know, I'm fortunate where I'm young and, you know, I'm healthy. I don't have, you know, diseases that I'm struggling with, knock on wood. But at the same time, like I am taking my level of health up a notch. Like I'm taking my vitamins, I'm doing herbs, I'm drinking warm fluids, I'm washing my hands so much that they're like so dry at this point. I'm exercising. Like it's made me really look at health. It's maybe even look at hygiene. If you think about it, like maybe there were people that just were not washing their hands, and like this kind of reminded them like we need to all wash our hands to make sure that we're not spreading any germs. Like I've even seen videos of people kind of showing you like how to appropriately really wash your hands, like how doctors wash their hands. And I'm like, you know what? Like, this is crazy because did we actually get taught how to wash our hands? I'm sorry I'm going into this like existential, like philosophical place right now, but I feel like it's really important to talk about because it's maybe even just think about like basic hygiene and how like we want to make sure that we're safe and not spreading things to each other, you know what I mean? And how now if I work in an office space with others, I will actually, once we pass this COVID-19 thing, I will actually second guess and think about if I will go into work if I'm feeling under the weather or sick. I don't think that I would after having gone through this experience. So again, like for me, aside from just changes and devastation and sadness, this has become like such a huge paradigm shift for me.
Very true. I think it's helping a lot of people to get out of that egocentric thinking, myself included. I live by myself, so when I was thinking of things, I was like, oh, okay, like I need to keep myself safe. Like I don't want to get other people sick. And then I was like, oh, if I need to go out, I'm not gonna be like bringing it back home to infect someone else. But there's people that have like older parents or older family members that live with them, or people that they need to be in contact with that are at risk. So paying attention to how my actions are going to affect these people. And that's what we've been seeing them explain with this whole flattening the curve of we really need to focus. And America's kind of known as being more individualistic and not collectivistic. So we're really having, like you're saying, that paradigm shift of having to put, think of ourselves and put others first as well. So it's been interesting, and I didn't realize how selfish I can be sometimes. So it's been eye-opening and some more awareness and helping all of us to just try and work on improving everything.
Yeah, and I want to mention also last thing, because this has come up for people too, from what I've seen, that a lot of people are having to cancel plans. They're canceling travel plans. Several people I've heard of have had to cancel or postpone weddings, birthday parties, kind of these big monumental like life changes and things like that. And what I want to emphasize is the importance of like, please process that and please grieve. I am personally in that process right now, no joke. I am like literally in denial. I'm getting married in a couple months. I don't know if it's going to happen. I have had wedding related activities scheduled a couple months from now. I have no idea if that's going to happen. And I am like, I know I'm trying to like keep it together, but internally I am so devastated because I'm slowly starting to come out of my denial and realizing what the reality is. And it's so devastating and hurtful because I really wanted this moment my whole life. And there's a possibility that it's not happening. So I really want to encourage everyone to please talk about that in your sessions if you can, and please process and please grieve. Like, it's so important to do that. Grieve is not just about death, but it's also about missed opportunities that we've maybe didn't have in our life. So that would be my other like PSA to everyone, that it's totally normal and totally valid.
That's such a good point. I know I've been doing that myself where people ask me like, how are you? I'm like, oh, I'm okay. Like nothing life threatening. And it's like, you don't want to talk about these things that are quote unquote, not less important, but feel less important, that like, there's like when we know people are getting really sick, having to go to the hospitals, people are dying from it, but totally valid that we do need to honor our feelings and we don't want to keep pushing those down. It's true. Like a canceled wedding is not the same as like, as someone's life. But
Yeah.
that's a huge thing. Like you're saying, that's something that's really
It
important.
sucks.
Yeah, it sucks. And it's totally fair. And we need to create a space where we're being aware, being realistic, understanding like where it is on the scale of things, but also, like you're saying, honor those feelings. They're valid to have. Don't like put yourself down for it. Don't be like, oh, I'm being selfish. We all have feelings. It's normal to have these reactions to these kinds of situations. But yeah, and also just being aware, seeing who you can talk about it with in therapy. Definitely, you're paying for that. But if just being aware of our other friends' hardships and what they're going through, and then if someone has like a family member that's sick in the hospital. It's talking about certain things might not be appropriate. So know who you're talking to, know your audience, but also know your feelings are totally valid.
Yes. Talk about it. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Janet.
Thank you.
It was really great to go over all this stuff, get your input on things. And like I said, I'll put a poll to see if it would be helpful for me to go over how to document things for sessions if you're at like county contracted agencies or things of that sort. So let me know your guys' feedback about that. And again, if you want to reach out or have any questions about OOTify, feel free to DM us or email us at iris@ootify.com. And last thing, if you have any resources about anything, any state, please send them our way. Any country. I don't know how many global followers we have, but might as well support the world.
Somebody said they were from the Netherlands, so that was cool.
Awesome. Hello from America to you guys. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Have a good evening.